I'll have to beg the forgiveness of the audience for speaking in English. There is a certain irony in the fact that Ziya Salam, whose book we have released today in Malayalam translation, is unable to be with us. And his absence, in many ways, underlines the essential truth that his book has attempted to describe about the reality of being Muslim in a Hindutva India. The reason why he is not here has to do with one letter. So, Ziya Salam and myself were both coming from Delhi. We both had tickets on the same Air India flight, booked by the same travel agent, who frankly is not very good, because travel agents should know that you cannot afford to make mistakes with names when you travel. So they introduced a spelling mistake in Ziya Salam's name and a spelling mistake in my name. Now guess which of us two was able to fly anyway? I was. There was an alphabet missing for my name that was noticed, but I was able to get through anyway. Because the name is Siddharth, last name Varadarajan, his name is Ziya, last name is Salam. And of course, if you have seen his photograph, he has a very luxurious beard, more luxurious than mine, and a beard which probably would have triggered some kind of mindset for the CISF guards, and then he went to the airline counter. Nobody was able or willing to help him for something that is so obviously a spelling mistake done by the travel agent. Ziya Salam is an associate editor of the Hindu Group newspaper, one of the biggest and most prestigious newspapers in the country. But, and I'm saying this with a full sense of responsibility, his name, his physical appearance left no room. There was no margin for error. Rest of us can get by. Somebody Sharma can be spelled without an H, it's okay. Deshpande can drop an E, it's okay. But heaven forbid that Ziya Salam is spelled Siya Salam, and even though he has all the IDs in the world to show that this is the same person, it becomes impossible for him to even enter the airport. I had actually planned, on the assumption that he was going to be here, a different kind of story to illustrate this harsh reality about our country. And because, for me, Ziya Salam's primary identity is that of a film critic. He and I were colleagues in the Hindu office in Delhi. When I joined the Hindu in 2004, he was editor of the weekend supplement in Delhi, and he was a prolific and very well-regarded writer. He is, in fact, still a very well-regarded writer on cinema and film. And I want to speak about the reality, because you see, when we talk about the book, the title says Being Muslim in Hindutva India. Think of it as being Muslim in India. And this is a book that reflects the reality of our era, this period that we are living through. If you asked a Muslim to write a book in the 1950s, or the 1960s, or the 70s, even the 80s, you would find a very different kind of book. And I want to take you back to the 1950s, to a film, very famous Hindi film, called Paying Guest. I wonder how many of you have seen it or remember this film, Devanand Nutan. It's set in Lucknow. Devanand plays a young lawyer called Ramesh Sharma. Not very successful. And for various reasons, he finds it difficult to rent a house because he's either not paying rent, or landlords see that he's unreliable, or they don't want to rent to a lawyer. So he decides to come up with a scheme where he dresses up as an old man and he pretends to be, in other words, a senior citizen. And he's able to not only find a house to rent, but the landlord is a Hindu gentleman. And this Hindu gentleman has a young daughter. Now, at the best of times, this would be surprising, right? For a man, a male landlord to rent a room to a single male when you have a young daughter. But of course, he dressed up as an old man and went. Now, the twist in the story, which is what makes it relevant for the topic today, is that Devanand doesn't dress up as any old man. He dresses up as an elderly Muslim man with the same kind of beard that ensured Ziya Salam couldn't enter Delhi airport today. Can you imagine today in any big city, and I can speak about Delhi, for example, which is the city I live in, because I have friends of mine who are Muslim who find it very difficult to rent a place. Can you imagine that kind of a scenario? Forget about that kind of movie being made. If you tried to make a movie like Paying Guest about a man dressing up as Devanand, dressing up as a Muslim gentleman, and then falling in love with the daughter, that's how the story progresses, falling in love with the daughter of the landlord. They'll say, you are doing love jihad, you are doing this, you are doing that. I'm not even going into whether such a film could be made with the same plot. But today in Bombay, Delhi, so many cities, it is virtually impossible for a Muslim to be able to rent a property of his or her choice, because landlords, owners, colony people, neighborhood, sometimes even the authorities will say, no, this is not allowed, or we will not give you this place to rent. So something so basic as the right or the freedom of somebody to live in a locality of their choice is today under a cloud, under question in India if you are Muslim. You may have read stories over the last 2-3 years. Now, there's always been prejudice, there's always been ghettoization in India. I don't want to suggest that this is a product only of the Modi years. But things have gotten much, much worse in the last 10 years. We would be crazy to deny this. In the last 2 years alone, I recall reading at least 3 or 4 stories. One from Moradabad in Uttar Pradesh, one from Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh, one from Baroda in Gujarat, where a Muslim family, Muslim woman, I think in the case of Baroda, she was a government employee, was trying to take possession of a flat that was allocated to her through some government scheme. And there were massive protests by the so-called Hindu residents who eventually, I think, ensured that she couldn't live there. The same thing happened in Bareilly, the same thing happened in Moradabad. These are stories that reached a certain level that they were reported about. Who knows how many such stories happen all the time in different places of this country? There is no chance at all that a Ramesh Kumar could dress up as an elderly Muslim gentleman and go to some place and stay as a paying guest in the way that they did in that movie made in 1956. So the freedom to reside, if you are Muslim, there's a question mark. The freedom to love who you want. This is also a reality of being Muslim in today's India. State after state, first of all, they have fabricated this concept of love jihad. This is a bogus conspiracy theory under which, for those of you who see, often terms get used and then they become normalized and then people just assume. I saw an interview or read about an interview that Amir Khan gave to India TV. Maybe it hasn't been released yet. The India TV people sent me the press release just now. And I was reading it just before I came here. So Rajat Sharma asks Amir Khan that you have, and he mentions, I think Amir Khan has married 3 times. And each time he has married Hindu women. And Rajat Sharma says, people could say you are doing love jihad. Is this a question that a leading TV anchor should put to an actor or to anybody? To normalize this kind of a word, you're talking about people who have fallen in love and have gotten married. And to introduce this element that just because you are of a different religion, somehow there is an element of triumphalism, of aggression. I was reading a story in the Hindustan Times and the Telegraph 3-4 days ago about a case from Uttarakhand, where there was a couple who had got married. The boy, I think his name is Aman Siddiqui. So Aman Siddiqui, see, India is whatever the Hindutva people may want to believe, whatever fantasy world they will live in. We live in a very, very complex society where there are all kinds of realities. So Aman Siddiqui has a Hindu mother and a Muslim father. He was brought up as a Hindu, although he has a Muslim name. And his mother and father separated and he lives with his mother. He marries a Hindu girl. They have a Hindu marriage ceremony. The parents of the girl are present. His mother is present. I even read in one of the court documents where this was an arranged marriage. And then a few weeks or months after the marriage, one of the girl's relatives, cousin or something of that kind, complains to the police that this is a case of forcible conversion. And Aman Siddiqui is arrested. And the High Court denies him bail. It takes him 6 months before finally the Supreme Court, day before yesterday, gave him bail. And the Supreme Court says that we are giving him bail because all he plans to do is to live with his wife peacefully. And so why is the state opposing this? And the state, of course, had no coherent answer. But it begs the question that if the Supreme Court believes that this couple wants to live together peacefully, why is there even a criminal case in the first place? There is a case only because in what we have become today, in this Naya Bharat, the very idea of a marriage between people who have names of 2 different religions is considered something very, very shocking. And you have cases like this in many, many small towns where couples try to get married, somebody interferes. In Ghaziabad, there is a horrible case where a couple got married, the young woman is kidnapped, or her parents complain to the police, the woman is taken away from the husband is locked up in prison, and pressure is put on the girl. And you have state after state passing laws that require government permission. If a couple who practice two different religions want to get married, what kind of a country have we become? And of course, this is on top of the earlier set of laws which were about religious conversion. And where again, if you want to convert, you have to get permission. Many states have this law: Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, now Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh. And these are laws that are used to harass people. And today, if you are a young Muslim man or a young Muslim woman who's in love with somebody of a different religion, honestly, good luck to you. Because you not only have to battle the prejudices of your parents or their relatives, but now you have to deal with the full might of the Indian state. So the freedom to be able to love who you want, if you are Muslim, is compromised. The freedom to eat what you want. In state after state, criminalizing the dietary practices of people, trying to force fit the dietary practices to conform to a certain, not even I would say a Hindu. Most Hindus eat meat, for example. But it's now a trend even in Delhi region. During Navratras, for example, there'll be a ban on the sale of meat in certain areas. So this Naya Bharat is putting pressure across the board on all of the fundamental freedoms and rights of Muslims. Of course, other minorities are also getting targeted and suffer in various ways. But the one minority that bears the brunt of this sustained assault are the Muslims of India. The freedom to wear what you want. How can we forget the infamous words of our Prime Minister during the CAA protest, anti-CAA protest in 2019-2020, when he said कि इन लोगों को उनके कपड़ों से आप पहचान सकते हो, that you can recognize these people from the clothes they wear. Can you imagine the Prime Minister of this country talking like that? Of course, that was in 2019. Since then, the standard has fallen even further, as I will show you later in my remarks. But in state after state, BJP ruled states in particular, an attempt is made to somehow criminalize or make it difficult or impossible for Muslim women, Muslim girls, if their parents are insisting that they wear hijab, for example, rather than leaving it to the choice of the individuals concerned. You have the government then interfering, trying to lay down what is allowed, what is not allowed. Freedom of worship. Of course, there is freedom of worship in this country, guaranteed by the Constitution. But 2 or 3 things over the last 5 or 6 years have begun to disturb me. And I'm sure it disturbs and agitates Muslims across the country. First, this attempt to equate any public manifestation of namaz with some kind of criminal activity, some kind of illicit, illegal activity. So I have read about cases being registered against Muslims because they prayed in a shopping mall, or because they prayed on a railway platform, or because they got off a bus and prayed on the side of a road, or because they attempted to pray in a university or college. What kind of a society have we become where you want to interfere with these kinds of basic things which don't bother anybody? Sure, if you engage in practices, religious practices that infringe on the rights of somebody else. For example, if you ask me individually, I'm not a big fan of the use of loudspeakers, whether for azan or for jagran or anything. Don't disturb anybody else while you're practicing your religion. That's fine. But you cannot have a situation where one kind of disturbance is criminalized, but other kinds of disturbances are allowed. So religious processions of certain kinds in Uttar Pradesh are being stopped because Muslims are involved. Even as other yatras, other processions that involve Hindu faith are not only allowed but even encouraged and supported by the administration. And then you have these disputes over places of worship triggered by no less a forum than the Supreme Court of India, which in the aftermath of its Babri Masjid judgment of 2019, which I disagree with, I have criticized, but that judgment at least had one reference to the importance of the earlier 1991 Places of Worship Act, which said that places of worship as they existed at the time of independence, their character will not be changed. And the hope was in many people's minds that Babri Masjid, the Supreme Court acknowledged that it was a crime to demolish the mosque. That crime of demolition has gone unpunished. That's a different matter. The land where the mosque stood has been given to the people who demolished it. That's a different matter. But at least the Supreme Court seemed to be suggesting, when it gave that judgment, that it would not tolerate future disputes over places of worship. It said that in 2019, but 1 year later, in the face of litigation against the Gyanvapi Mosque in Banaras, this whole can of worms has been reopened. So today you have bogus claims being manufactured, pushed through the courts for the so-called recovery of mosque in Varanasi, the mosque in Mathura, other places. Virtually every state, disputes are being manufactured, reopened, and turned into potential points of division, polarization, and violence. And this has also created a situation, I think, where Muslims in India today feel more and more insecure. The freedom to speak. You all must be familiar with the case of Ali Khan Mahmoodabad, who was arrested for sedition during Operation Sindoor because he made a statement drawing attention to the fact that it is not enough to highlight or to use somebody like Colonel Sophia Qureshi as a role model, and he applauded that and he said this is a very good thing the government had done. And he said it's now time for the government to show the same degree of sensitivity when it comes to other issues which concern Muslims, and he mentioned mob lynching and so on. And this statement of his, which many people could have made, many people have made in one way or the other, was picked upon by first the Haryana State Commission for Women, and of course the BJP is behind that. And they ensured that a criminal case was filed against the professor. And please understand the reality. This case was filed precisely because, not just because of what Mahmoodabad said, but because the person who said it was a Muslim. And by targeting and arresting a professor at Ashoka University, a leading intellectual scholar, well regarded, well respected, the message was being sent to Muslims across the board that here we are proceeding against somebody so famous and well known and well regarded, and we are charging him with sedition because of what he said. And all he spoke for was for communal harmony. for a country that is not divided on the basis of religion. His was a message of national integration. But the message that was sent was that if you are an ordinary Muslim who says these things, no one will come to save you. So at least Mahmudabad got bail, although under very funny circumstances, because the Supreme Court has set up some kind of an inquiry committee to investigate the real meaning of his remarks. But the idea is to send a chilling effect, is to scare and deter ordinary Muslims from speaking out against discrimination, from speaking out against communal violence. Because the charge will be that when you speak about division, when you speak about hatred, when you speak against hatred, when you speak against polarization, you are the anti-national. So the person who is spreading hatred, the person who is spreading division, they are okay. But if you speak against it, then this is somehow considered seditious. So, Mahmudabad gets sent to jail, but the Madhya Pradesh minister, who referred to Colonel Sophia Qureshi as the sister of terrorists, he was never arrested. In fact, a case was filed against him only after people went to court. A minister in Maharashtra, I'm forgetting his name, BJP minister, who made a statement that he appealed to Hindus that next time you go to the market to buy something, you ask the shopkeeper to recite Hanuman Chalisa. And if he can't recite Hanuman Chalisa, don't buy from him. And he said this in the context of what happened in Pahalgam, where the terrorists identified and shot dead Hindu tourists after asking them to read the Kalma. Now we know that the terrorists' aim was to divide Indians on the basis of religion. The Lashkar-e-Taiba would like nothing better than to spread hatred between Hindus and Muslims. But why is a BJP minister doing the same thing? And you have people in authority talking like this, spreading hatred, spreading division, calling upon Hindus to boycott Muslims. And this too has become, and this is not the first time. You remember during COVID, when a concerted effort was made to blame Muslims for the spread of the coronavirus. So the phrase was used, Corona Jihad. And you had some leaders in Uttar Pradesh, BJP leaders, telling ordinary Hindus, don't buy fruits and vegetables from Muslims. So this assault on the livelihood of Muslims. So the freedom to live where you want, to love who you want, to eat what you want, to wear what you want. Your freedom to say your namaz if you're in a public place and it's the time for you to say namaz. All of that is not enough. Your freedom to practice your livelihood is also under pressure. As is your freedom to speak. On top of this, and Ziya's book goes into all of these details, there is the conscious attempt to erase the presence of Muslims from the public sphere, to change the name of places, to try to erase the contribution of Muslim Indians to Indian history. So this erasure, trying to pretend as if Muslims have not been in India for centuries and that this country belongs equally to them as it does to anybody else. This process is also underway, and you can see this again in many states, particularly in North India. But to my mind, the most worrying aspect of being Muslim in Hindutva India, or this Naya Bharat that Mr. Modi and his colleagues are creating, is the blatant manner in which the top political leadership in this country on a virtually daily basis, speaks and criticizes and targets Muslims with the most poisonous kind of propaganda. In 2019, during the Lok Sabha election, when I think Mr. Modi was speaking in Wardha, and he attacked Rahul Gandhi for contesting the 2019 election from Wayanad. And he said something very funny. In my view, it was a communal, illegal speech that he made. The Election Commission decided not to proceed against him for very obvious reasons. But what he said was an insult to the Indian voter, insult to the people of Kerala, insult to the people of Wayanad, insult to Hindus, insult to Muslims. He said that Rahul Gandhi took a microscope and looked for a place in India where the majority is in minority, and then decided to stand from that constituency. So, at other times, the BJP is always saying there is no majority, there is no minority. But here you have the Prime Minister of India dividing voters into majority and minority, and then cracking a joke as if minority voters are not Indians. But even that in 2019 was relatively mild communal propaganda from the Prime Minister compared to what he said during the 2024 campaign, which was well and truly shocking. His speeches numbered more than 100, nearly 200 speeches he gave, campaign speeches. And Human Rights Watch did a count of the number of speeches where he attacked Muslims, and it was close to 100 speeches. And the message in all of those speeches was the same horrible kind of message that you would never expect the Prime Minister, somebody who swears on the Constitution of India, to descend to that level. What did he say? He said, if the Congress wins, if BJP is defeated, then Hindus, he was telling Hindus, your Mangal Sutra, your buffaloes, your homes, your jewelry will be taken away and given to Muslims. And of course, he never used the word Muslim directly, but he used all kinds of slurs, infiltrators, people who produce more children. So you have the Prime Minister of this country speaking in that way. India has, we've had difficult times in the last 80 years. There's been violence against Muslims in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, but the last time that a Prime Minister spoke in this way, to directly incite. So Rajiv Gandhi made his infamous statement justifying the killing of Sikhs in November 84, when he said, when a big tree falls, the earth is bound to shake. But here you have a Prime Minister directly inciting hatred between Hindus and Muslims by trying to scare Hindus into believing that if the BJP is defeated, then Hindu women will lose their Mangal Sutras and Muslims will get it. Hindus will lose their buffaloes and Muslims will get it. In Karnataka and different states, the BJP put out cartoons, advertisements that were blatantly communal. And I think that this is also today part of the reality of what it means to be Muslim in today's India, that as a citizen of this country, you can no longer rely on the impartiality of your Prime Minister. And what can there be anything more disgraceful than that? That your Prime Minister, who's supposed to represent all Indians, is blatantly partisan and speaks the language of division, speaks the language of hatred. And of course, when the message goes from the top, everybody else in the party echoes the same language. I was listening to a speech earlier this month. Amit Shah was attacking Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal. He accused her of not supporting Operation Sindoor. Now, I don't want to get into the fight between Bharatiya Janata Party and Trinamool Congress. This is their fight, it's their business. He is welcome to attack Mamata Banerjee, I don't care. He is welcome to accuse Mamata Banerjee of opposing Operation Sindoor, I don't care. But What he said is not acceptable for the following reason. He said, Mamta, and I've got the quote before you, to appease Muslims in India, Mamta Didi opposed Operation Sindoor. So here the target is actually not Mamta. Please pay attention. To appease Muslims, to appease Muslim vote bank, Mamta Didi opposed Operation Sindoor. Who is the villain here in the eyes of ordinary Hindus? You have the Home Minister of this country saying that Muslims of India oppose Operation Sindoor. That Muslims of India are unpatriotic. And in order to appease or to win the support of these so-called unpatriotic people, Mamta Banerjee is opposing Operation Sindoor. In other words, the original sin is being committed by these so-called unpatriotic Muslims, and Mamta Banerjee is trying to appeal to them, appease as they say, by also opposing Operation Sindoor. Can you believe a Home Minister of India talking like this? Trying to paint the entire Muslim community, the so-called Muslim vote bank, as somehow being unpatriotic? Well, this is not the first time. So when you have political leaders directly targeting and targeting Muslims in this way, and it goes back to, of course, the foundational theories of Hindutva, which is this belief, as Savarkar wrote about this, that Hindus are the only true Indians. So the original founder of the two-nation theory, his descendants, political descendants today are ruling India, and they are doing their best to implement this dangerous, poisonous theory by dividing Hindus and Muslims, targeting Muslims in every which way, putting pressure on them, trying to restrict their rights, trying to constrain their rights, trying to make them feel vulnerable and threatened. And I haven't spoken about the mob lynching and the incidents of violence that have happened. You see, I've heard BJP people say that the number of riots in the last 10 years has come down. Of course, people can question that statistics. But please understand how fear works. The purpose of a riot is to terrorize, is to strike fear. It is to polarize, it is to divide. And you don't need to kill 2,000 people in one day, in 3 days. You don't need to kill 1,200 people, 1,500 people in a week's time, as happened in Gujarat in 2002, in order to accomplish that goal. You can accomplish the same goal with random acts of mob lynching in different parts of the country. So perhaps since 2014 to now, the number of Muslims who have been killed in mob violence is less than 100. But the geographical dispersal of these incidents, the randomness of it all, somebody is traveling on a train and they get targeted. Passengers on a bus get targeted somewhere. Somebody is driving on the highway, they get targeted. That random nature sends a message to ordinary Muslims that if you look and feel, if you look like a Muslim, if you sound like a Muslim, agar aap apne wo kapdon se pehchane ja rahe ho, as Mr. Modi said, if you have that kind of beard, then there is always a risk in the back of your mind. There's always that fear. And it is this pressure, this reality that Ziya Salam has captured in his book. I'm sure that the translator and the publishers have captured the simple elegance of his prose, his English prose in Malayalam, so that the stories he narrates, the facts he presents, are easily understood. But frankly, this is a book that everybody should read. We all know about some of these incidents. We've heard stories. But when you see it documented and put in a book-length form, you realize that this is exactly how serious the problem is. So I applaud Ziya for doing this book. It's a pity he's not here today. But I thank the publishers and the translators for this wonderful endeavor of ensuring that the book is available for Malayalam readers. And I hope that in the weeks and months ahead, this book will circulate widely in the state and people will read it and discuss and appreciate the truth, simple truths that Ziya has written about. Thank you very much.